notice again. This notice is in reference to East Baton Rouge Parish School Board's certification pursuant to gubernatorial proclamation JPE 2020-30 regarding board member participation by telephone or video conference as it relates to school board meetings. Please be advised that due to the public health emergency caused by the coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, and the stay-at-home orders issued by the President Trump and Governor Edwards, the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board may, for the duration of this emergency, conduct board meetings and committee meetings electronically via telephone and/or video conference. The board workshop/public forum scheduled for July 19, 2020, immediately following the special meeting, will be streamed live via Microsoft Teams events. A link to watch the meeting can be found on board docs located on the school board website, ebrschools.org/about. So with that, we will have the meeting is now called to order. We will suspend with the invocation and pledge of allegiance since we have just done that. And Madam Secretary, would you please conduct a roll call?
District 7, President Gode.
Here.
District 3, Vice President Howard.
Present.
District 1, Mr. Blue. Mr. Blue.
He's muted. I can see him.
Mr. Blue, can you hear me? Is your mic on? Okay, we're going to go with he's here since we see him. District 2, Mr. Lannis.
Here.
District 4, Ms. Collins. Ms. Collins. District 5, Ms. Ware Jackson.
Here.
District 6, Ms. Dyson. District 8, Ms. Bernard.
Present.
District 9, Mr. Tapman.
Present.
Ms. Collins.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Next, I'm sorry, I have to go back here. I lost my screen. There we go. Get back to board docs here. So the first item on the agenda is proposed presentation of proposed 2020-2021 general fund budget by Ms. Lopez and Mr. Crochet. Hello, Hello, Ms. Lopez.
Good evening, board members. How are you doing this evening?
Fine.
Doing great.
Hi. Do we have the PowerPoint? Okay, tonight I will be presenting the proposed 2021 general fund budget and special revenue budgets. Next slide, please. The proposed 2021 general fund budget includes staff recommendations for revenues and expenditures. Revenue projections are based on the revised 2019-2020 general fund budget and other current data. Budget law requires a notice in the official journal and a public hearing. Next slide, please. As you can see, with the revised 2019-2020 budget, we are expected to have a final ending balance of $0.7,700,000. Our proposed 2021 budget, we are expected to have an ending balance of $0.2 million or $200,000. Next slide, please. Our 2021 staffing allotment has not changed. We are still below the state in every level. Next slide, please. As you can tell from this chart, each year we have continued to match our staffing with our true student population, which has helped us achieve a balanced budget than these last 2 years. Next slide, please. The projected unassigned fund balance as of 6/30/21 is $26.7 million. The projected assigned fund balance as of 6/30/21 is $17.6 million, which is inclusive of our inventory cost. Total projected fund balance at 6/30/20 is $44.3 million. Fund balance as a percentage of general fund revenues is projected to be 10% for 2021. While this is acceptable per the State Department of Education's requirements, the East Baton Rouge's policy is 15%, but each year we get closer to reaching that goal. Next slide, please. As you can see, our fund balance history, the last 2 years, our revenues and our expenditures have met, which means that we are not overspending our budget as we have in previous years. Next slide, please. The total revenue is projected to increase by $2.4 million. Ad valorem tax collections are projected to increase by 2.4% or $4.3 million. Sales and use tax collections are projected to decrease by approximately 8% or $7.3 million. Both of these projections are based upon the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's economist projections of what will happen due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. The interest on investments is projected to decrease $0.6 million. This is an additional increase from the revised budget due to the change in the Treasury bonds during the COVID-19 pandemic. State MFP funding is projected to increase by $5.5 million. Revenue from federal sources is projected to increase by $1.1 million from the indirect cost associated with the Strong Start grant. Next slide, please. As you can see from this slide, the vast majority of our money, our funding for the general fund, is going to come from both our state and our property taxes, with sales tax taking the largest decrease. Next slide, please. Total expenditures is projected to increase by $2.8 million. This is compared to our revised budget of 2019-20. A total of $2.4 million increase has been included to assist Proposition 3 to maintain current salary levels across the district until sales tax collections return to pre-COVID-19 levels. The special education program increased by $2.2 million for continued growth throughout our district. Electricity and natural gas actual expenditures for 18-19 and projected expenditures for 19-20 were $7.5 million and $7.9 million. Using the Department of Energy prices for 2020, our projections for 2021 is $7.6 million. Next slide, please. Fuel costs for the 18-19 and projected expenditures for 19-20 are $1.9 and $2.1 million respectively. Projections for 2021 are $2.3 million. As you know, in the beginning of 19-20, our fuel prices were significantly higher than they were at the end. So in order to come up to the $2.3 million is we take an average from the beginning and the end to come up with an average price. The appropriation to Type 1 charter schools is increased by $5.9 million. The Type 1 charter schools, Basis Charter, the Emerge School, IDEA Bridge Academy, and IDEA Innovation will be adding additional grade levels. The Community School for Apprenticeship Learning, or CSAL, will open an elementary school beginning in August of 2020. The appropriation to Type 1 charters line item is expected to be at $58.1 million. This amount includes all state and local funding due to the charter schools on a per pupil basis. Any cost reductions to the district are not included in this total and would be throughout the budget. Next slide, please. A total of $1 million has been appropriated for the 25% in FEMA non-reimbursable purchases. There is currently no estimate of the costs associated with the safety precautions being taken due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All necessary precautions will be taken to ensure both staff and students are in clean and safe environments. Approximately $0.8 million in software purchases for continued distance learning of students will be funded through the CARES or the Strong Start Act. A total of $135,000 will be removed from the budget due to the end of the LSU Kane contract. Approximately $0.8 million of expenditure reductions by moving all parental involvement facilitators and instructional coaches to grant-funded positions at the discretion of the school administrators. Next slide, please. As you can see in our expenditure reductions by category, we have reduced teachers, we have reduced staff, not just teachers, about 130 positions. And this is so that our staffing can meet what our proposed children will be for the next year. And that is always our goal. Next slide, please. This is our general fund expenditures by major category. As always, our #1 priority is the instruction of our children, and that is where the vast majority of our expenditures are. Next slide, please. According to the state of Louisiana, we are required to have a 70% instructional requirement estimate. The 1920 estimate is 73.9%, and the 2021 estimate is 73.7%. Next slide, please. As of right now, the 18-19 70% instructional requirement history has not been submitted to us by the Louisiana Department of Education. So the only data we have is 17-18. But as you can see, we have always met this goal, and we see no reason why we wouldn't in 18-19 as well as 19-20. Next slide, please. This slide shows our charter school projections starting with 13-14 through 2021. This includes both our Type 1, our Type 2, and our Type 5, inclusive of state and local funding. As you can see, between 1920 and 2021, we are increasing approximately $20.3 million. Next slide, please. This is a list of all of our special revenue funds that are included within the different budgets of EBR that are not within the general fund. And as you can see, we have many, many grants throughout the district to help our students. Next slide. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I'm sorry, I had to turn my mic back on. Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. I have a couple questions. So in the document, and I didn't get an opportunity to have this conversation with you previously because I've literally been trying to figure all this out, so I apologize, and we'll have further conversations after this meeting. But I know one of the things that I saw in the draft memo that you sent out, where you kind of narrated what was happening with the budget, you talked a lot about like legacy costs and how some of those legacy costs are still costs that are like we basically are spending money to support legacy costs of what happened in Central and Zachary and all of these places. And so knowing what we know about a potential new school district in St. George, I was wondering, is there any way that we as a school district, as a school board, can legally mitigate legacy costs? And how do we prepare going forward, like if this is to happen to us again, so that we're not again stuck with legacy costs of a potential new school district?
I would have to defer that to Mr. Shamlin. I would assume that anything like that would have to be in the contract negotiated between the two districts upon the break, because I know that was with Zachary left, Baker left, Central left, there was a contract in place. So I assume that if that is a path we would like to go, and budget wise, I would encourage, that would have to be contractually agreed upon.
Mr. Howard, that is correct. Any legacy costs, those issues would be negotiated prior to any finalization of a contract.
Right. So as far as what happened with the previous school districts, Baker, Zachary, we're basically already contractually obligated to continue those legacy costs, and there's nothing we can do to mitigate or to renegotiate those costs as it relates to those particular districts that have already broken away.
That's a good question, and that's an answer I'd have to get for you. That would depend on how the current contract reads, as well as potentially what the law says, and I'll note to get you an answer on that.
Thank you. I think that as you said, Ms. Lopez, I think that it would be important for us as a board, as a collective, to just think about ways that we can mitigate those costs so that we just won't continue to pay into something that we no longer have control over.
I think 100%.
My next question, my next question is related to the budget forecast. I appreciate you for like breaking it down in the charts as it relates to how the monies from general fund and special revenue are allocated. But I think I asked for this again last time, and I will continue to just press us to do a better job. And this is no knock on you, Ms. Lopez, but as a collective, if we can get a forecast based on projections for what 3 to 5 years would look like based off of projected enrollment, based off of, I know we can't account for pandemics, which this is a crazy world that we're living in, but like if we can get some kind of forecast, budget forecast as a board going forward, I think it'll help us, at least when we're making decisions throughout the year, make better decisions that can prioritize us to having a sustainable budget throughout the future. So I appreciate that. If we can just even have conversations on what that can look like.
Sure,
And
I
then
totally agree. And my goal this year was to have one, but the pandemic kind of put a huge wrench in that.
yes, I 100% understand. And then my last question, and then I'll ask the rest of these questions as we continue to have these conversations. And when the budget actually comes to us, but as it relates to COVID-19 expenses, I know that there is projection. I know we're going to lose sales revenue. I know we're going to lose all of this, and we're projected to receive $18.8 million in CARES Act money. Is there any expenses that we have occurred or had to expenditure throughout COVID that are not covered under the CARES Act, but were a result of COVID-19? And how are we thinking about those things?
Yes, sir. So much like with the flood, we have a special fund, Fund 29, which is our disaster relief fund, where we basically hold those expenditures so that we can match them with federal reimbursement funds when the time comes. I ran the projections through June 30th for both flood and for COVID. So far for COVID, and this is not inclusive of technology spent by the Strong Start Act, we're at about $300,000 in expenditures. Now, I know that Mr. McCann and Mr. Nikes are looking on buying many items for our schools that have not hit yet. I have not seen those expenditures yet, but so far as of June 30th, we're at $300,000.
Thank you. And my last question, as it relates to the pandemic and all of those things, and I appreciate you for engaging me for a few moments to discuss these things. And if you can give us a clearer picture of like what actual savings were actualized based off of school closing. So I know we were not running buses that's the same. Our lights were not on in schools the same. Like, are there any savings that we saw because of actual school closing as of March 13th? Or if you can get that number for me, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Next up would be Mr. Lannis.
Sorry, I was writing something down. Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Thank you. I just have a few questions. My first question, if we can get the board attorney back on, Attorney Shamlin, just a quick question to piggyback on something that Vice President Howard brought up, and I'm very curious about it. Do you know right now offhand, which you probably don't, I'm not expecting you to right now, but if you do know offhand, could you let us know what's the duration of the legacy contracts that we have with those 3 districts?
Yeah, I don't know that offhand. I can get that information for you. It is my belief that those contracts are perpetual in nature. So once they were negotiated, they were final. But I don't want you to hold me to that.
Okay.
What I can do is probably get us a review of each of those contracts, the agreements and the impacts on the district. And I'm referring to the agreements regarding Central, Zachary, and Baker. And I believe that's what Mr. Howard raised. And it's probably going to require a little more in-depth discussion. And so I can get that information for you, pull it together, maybe present it to the board in writing, and then maybe come back and revisit it in a workshop form as well.
Yes, sir. And when you do that, could you also break it down individually on the districts and let us know how much money we're actually paying for legacy costs per district?
Sure, and that's something I can work with Ms. Lopez on, but we can get that information for you.
Okay, sounds great. Ms. Lopez, quick question. I heard
Yes.
you bring up and talk about staff cuts and the revenues that we've actually projected to increase due to those cuts. Is it possible for you to get us a breakdown of where those staff cuts are actually coming from so we'll know what we need to work on in the future?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question, because something that was brought up is for Mr. Ben Nikes. Are you on right now?
Yes, sir.
Or Mr. McCants, either or.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. So I just had a question because I know Ms. Lopez was just talking. She said there are some things that you guys still have to purchase, being you and Mr. McCants and the entire team that's helping out with COVID-19 expenses and supplies. First and foremost, thank you, because a lot of families had those concerns and have been asking about supplies and whether or not our schools are stocked. So that's going to be my next question. Are our schools stocked right now with supplies based off of expenditures and things that we've already been paying to ensure that if we do open schools, but when we do open schools back up, rather, that we are prepared and we have our students back inside of safe environments?
Yes, sir. Mr. McCann and myself briefed senior cabinet this morning on our procurement updates. We've been working with Mr. Williams and his team along with the Aramark team to make sure we have things in place first and foremost for the opening of school. And then we also are extending kind of into a phase 2 or bid process to continue to open the pipeline up for more supplies as the school year goes along. So things that we're in the middle of, we've received some items. In fact, we just received the hand sanitizers in the last 24 hours. So there's hundreds of cases of that being prepared. We discussed today that what we want to put together is almost a push package for all schools. And then at the end of July, they'll be able to provide us in one of the documents that we're capturing from them, verifications that they have everything on hand. So some of the things, of course, you know that we're purchasing were hand sanitizers for all classrooms. We're replacing soap pumping stations within all the bathrooms. We've purchased 2 masks for every employee and student, so that's currently out. Also, some things that are being looked at right now is we're finalizing kind of our signage and floor arrows and things like that that we'll need within schools to kind of point people into best practices and also correct directions when they're moving in the hallways. So all of that is being looked at as well. And we have a pretty extensive list of things, providing thermometers and others that are out right now that we're working through on state contract purchase. But
and being also,
schools will get kind of one push package of everything they need based on the size of the building and also the number of students that they have.
And being also mentioned the disinfectant wipes as well as face shields for our cafeteria and teachers.
Correct.
Okay, so teachers will also have face shields too?
Yes, we're focusing on that for like our ESS teachers, some of our bus attendants, speech therapists, and others as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Mr. Lannis, can I add something right here?
Go ahead.
This may add some a little bit of information to the question that Mr. Howard asked originally about the legacy cost. When Zachary broke away, there were no legacy costs attached. So basically, every person who was in the Zachary school, in Zachary's 4 schools at the time, when they retired, EBR became responsible for that. So EBR did not say you need to pay legacy costs. However, when Central broke away, EBR said this is what you owe us for legacy costs, and Central sued and won in court, and the same exact thing happened. So EBR still incurred 100% of any of those employees in the Central school system who worked for EBR before as well. So basically, we are paying all of the costs of those who retired who worked either in Central or Zachary.
And I'm sorry, I hope I'm not speaking for Mr. Howard, and then I'll just wrap up after this. I think that was his concern, was that making sure we do our due diligence on that end because of some things that we did in the past that we could have done better. And I think that it kind of got us caught up in a catch-22 when Central when Central School District did break away.
Yes, and I mean, the legacy costs are real. And so when it went to court, they sued not to do it, I guess because they said, well, Zachary didn't. And so why should we? Went to court and it was upheld and they won the suit.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that information, by the way.
You're welcome.
And this is Mike Goday. I just want to add, a lot of these issues are legislative type issues. I don't want it to appear that the school district was asleep at the wheel or anything when this was going on, because a lot of this was determined by the legislative act that we as a district did not have any we could influence the act, but we didn't have the final say so on it. Is that it, Mr. Lannis, for you? Yes, sir. Ms. Ware Jackson.
This too is sort of touching on Vice President Howard's comments. I wondered in the litigation, in the decisions around the contract, who actually were negotiating that? Was that the district and our lawyer? Did we have extra counsel on that? Did we have outside counsel as well?
I'm almost certain we had external counsel handling those negotiations. I'm sure that the general counsel at the time, Mr. Rutledge, I believe, I believe he was in the position, was involved in those talks, but I'm almost certain external counsel handled it. And I'm going to go ahead and request all of the information related to those agreements, because I think the current board probably needs an update, or at least you guys need to be informed as to what happened during the time.
Yeah, and it was external counsel, number of them working on that.
Yeah, I know we usually have Hammonds and Sills involved, but this may not be the same kind of situation where we would have the usual people in charge. So yeah, I would like to know specifically how that went, so we can get a better understanding of where we are right now with that. Thanks. I'll have questions later, but until then.
Later today or later?
Yeah, later in the presentation.
Okay, because I don't know how much more presentation you're.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Any other board members would like to speak? While waiting for that, Ms. Lopez, I do have a few. Could you go back to your slide, or could you get the slide put up on the funding for charter schools? Because I don't have the slide in front of me, but I thought I heard you say something about it went up $21 million.
20.3 from 1920 to 2021, and that is inclusive of type 1, type 2, type 5, state and local.
Okay, because from 2019, 2020 to 2020, 2021, because I only see like $7 million in your budget package.
That's in type 1. There is that is just local for type 2 and type 5. It's not include the state portion.
Okay, but when I look at the expenditure summary, it says other use of funds, and I'm only seeing a little bit less than $6 million change. That's on page 34 of the budget presentation. And I thought all of that money would show up under other use of funds.
No, sir, not the state portion for type 2 and type 5. It's just directly debited from us.
But
but it's not in the budget, just the local portion.
Sorry to belabor this, but when I look at the enrollment, the type 2 charters, you put going up by only $1 million. And so that seems like a relatively, I just can't come up with the $21 million. We don't have to go through the math here. If you send that to me, I would really like to understand that, because the numbers don't seem to make sense to me. I don't see how it can be going up that much based upon what I have here, but I'm probably wrong. Or is there going to be a separate presentation on the special funds, or is that it also?
This is the entire presentation. However, I will take any questions on special revenue, and we have staff available for any questions you have for special revenue.
Then I have a question related to, I got to find the exact fund here. Related to the Magnet Schools Assistance Program. I have no idea what page that is on, but we started off with a negative balance in the fund balance of $500,000, and then we're projecting another fund balance decrease. So we're going to be over $800,000 in the hole on that fund. And I just wonder how we're doing that, and why do we continue doing that? I'm sorry, I'm catching you with questions here. But
no, that's okay. That is going to be in the order question.
Mr. Goldie, if you allowed us to dig into that, because that's the $15 million there over the 5 years for the Magnet School Assistance. Can we have opportunity to dig into that?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And then my second question, and I want to start this off with saying how wonderful a job our child nutrition program has done and has been to us. but I have concerns about our child nutrition program and what we're doing, and I don't want to run it off the cliff on the thing. And this is not a complaint. I'm just saying this is something where we need some planning, because if I look at that, I know in our budget works, we have cut back the amount of money that the district has contributed to child nutrition. I understand we've done that purposely because there was a balance built up. But if I look at last year, we ran a deficit. This year, we're again running a $2 million deficit, which will leave us only with a balance of $2 million. So if we continue doing what we're doing after this year, there's only one more year, then the cliff is there. And so I am not suggesting changing the budget or anything, but that's an area where I think we need some planning to figure out what are we going to do to be sustainable, because we've had the luxury, and I can see the director of the child nutrition on the screen now. Thank you again very much for all the work you've done, and we've tapped into that fund to help balance our budget and to bring that fund balance down. But we do have responsibilities with child nutrition, and I don't want to be using that fund and all of a sudden we get to the end of next year and go, oh my God, what are we going to do? And so we need to be putting that into our thinking about how do we work with the child nutrition, because that's a very important part of our school, something we need to fund. And we've sort of been living off the past budgets that have been built up, that balance, but that's going to be coming to an end. So we need to start thinking about how do we do that? Do we restructure that area? Or are we going to have to just budget more from the district to go into that or whatever? So I think that's an area, not for passing this budget, but an area I want to lift up that we need to take a deep dive into to see how we will fund that. And I know that funding has been knocked in the hat right now with all of the COVID-19 and how we've had to change. And again, we've done an admirable job of supplying food to our citizenry as we go through this. But it's just an area I wanted to highlight and say we need to be thinking about what the future holds for us on that. And I guess that's the end of my questions right now. Thank you for all the data that you sent us earlier on the spreadsheets. I do ask, though, that I get a spreadsheet I can download because what I got this time is the download is blocked. I can look at it, but I cannot download this.
Send it to you. It shouldn't be, sir. It should just be a normal Excel file.
I know, and I've run into this before, and I don't know why, but sometimes the way it's sent to us, if it's saved on the cloud or whatever, we can't download it. I don't know, but I couldn't download it. I don't know if anyone else could.
I will resend it to you tonight, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So that ends my comments. Any other comments from any other board members? I see none. Since this is a workshop, we do not have public comment associated with this. This is putting out the budget out there for everyone to see. Ms. Lopez, could you please, for the audience, work through the process of where this goes from now? So we have this presentation now, and
yes,
then,
sir.
Go ahead.
And then next week, we will have an additional workshop before the board meeting on Thursday. And then Thursday during the board meeting, you will have the opportunity to either approve or move to another board meeting the budget.
Okay, I just wanted everyone to be clear on what the process is. Thank you very much. So if there are no other comments and no other items, last chance. Okay, seeing none, the workshop on the budget is now closed.